The frozen planet had no real name. On star maps, it was marked only as Outpost K-47, a cold border world at the edge of human-controlled space. Most soldiers hated being sent there. The wind never stopped screaming, the sky was always gray, and the cold could kill a man faster than a bullet. Evan Hale had been alone on that planet for 3 days. His supply ship had crashed during a magnetic storm, breaking apart across the ice fields. The distress beacon worked, but rescue would take time. Until then, Evan survived inside a damaged emergency shelter, running on low power, counting rations, and listening to the wind hit the metal walls like an angry beast. Evan was a trained human soldier, but even training did not make the cold easier. He wrapped himself in thermal gear, checked his rifle again and again, and forced himself to stay alert. Outpost K-47 was not empty space. Alien smugglers, pirates, and worse sometimes crossed this region. On the fourth night, the storm grew stronger. Snow slammed into the shelter so hard it felt like the planet wanted to bury him alive. Evan checked the temperature readout. It had dropped even lower than before. His breath formed small clouds inside his helmet. Then his motion sensor beeped. Evan froze. The sensor was old and damaged, but it almost never triggered without reason. He slowly reached for his rifle and moved toward the small control panel. The signal was weak but clear. Something was moving outside. Impossible, Evan muttered. No normal creature could survive this storm, not without heavy equipment. Even humans in full armor avoided travel during nights like this. The signal grew closer. Evan switched the external camera on. At first he saw only white snow and darkness. Then through the storm a shape appeared. It was small, moving unevenly, falling, then standing again. It was not a machine. It was alive. Evan's heart started beating faster. He adjusted the camera zoom. The shape looked human-like but wrong. Too thin, too smooth. The heat reading was strange, stronger than expected. The figure collapsed just meters from the shelter. Evan hesitated. Every military rule told him to stay inside. Unknown life form, possible trap, possible enemy. But another voice spoke louder inside him, the simple human instinct not to leave someone to die. He grabbed his rifle, sealed his suit, and opened the shelter door. The cold hit him like a wall. It stole his breath, burned his skin, and tried to push him back inside. Evan fought against it and stepped out into the storm. He moved carefully, following the sensor signal. Snow reached his knees. The wind screamed in his ears. Then he saw her clearly. She was lying on her side, half buried in snow. She was an alien woman. Her skin was pale, almost silver blue, glowing faintly even in the darkness. Long white hair spread across the ice like frost. Her body was thin, fragile-looking, wrapped in torn fabric that offered no protection against the cold. Her chest moved slowly, shallow breaths fighting to continue. Evan lowered his rifle. She was not armed, she was barely conscious. As Evan approached, her eyes opened. They were large and dark, filled with fear. She tried to move away but failed. Her lips moved and a weak voice came out, distorted but understandable through the universal translator. "Please, don't leave." Evan knelt beside her. "Easy," he said calmly. "I'm not here to hurt you." Her body trembled violently. She looked at him as if he were both a monster and a miracle. Her hand reached out and weakly grabbed the front of his suit. "Cold," she whispered. "I'm freezing." Evan checked her temperature with his wrist scanner. It was dangerously low. Whatever species she was, she would not last long out here. "I can take you inside," Evan said, "but you have to stay calm." Her grip tightened. Tears froze on her cheeks. "Take me," she said softly. Then, with a desperate, broken smile, she added words that made Evan pause. "I'll be your blanket, I keep you warm, please." Evan did not fully understand what she meant, but he understood enough. She was not offering herself in fear or shame. She was offering survival, and she was dying. He made his decision. Evan carefully lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, almost weightless. Her body was burning hot despite the cold, her skin strange but not unpleasant against his gloves. The walk back to the shelter felt longer than before. Every step was a battle against the wind. Evan focused on one thing only, getting them both inside. When the shelter door finally sealed shut, the noise of the storm faded to a dull roar. Evan lowered her onto the floor and quickly increased the internal temperature. The alien woman curled inward, shaking violently. Evan removed his helmet. "Can you understand me?" he asked. She nodded weakly. "My name is Evan," he said. "You're safe for now." Her lips moved slowly. "Lureth," she whispered. "My name." Evan wrapped her in a thermal blanket, but she barely reacted. The scanner beeped again. Her condition was still critical. "What happened to you?" Evan asked. Her eyes flickered toward the shelter walls, fear returning. "They are hunting me," she said. "If they find me, you die too." That made Evan tense. "Who is hunting you?" She shook her head. "Not yet, please, just let me live." Evan took a deep breath. He was a soldier, not a doctor, but he knew one thing: leaving her untreated was not an option. He adjusted the heater further and sat beside her, watching carefully. Minutes passed. Her shaking slowly eased. Her breathing became steadier. She opened her eyes again and studied him closely. "You didn't leave me," she said quietly. "No," Evan replied. "I didn't." Her gaze softened. "Humans are not like they say." Evan frowned. "What do they say?" "That you are cold inside," she answered. "That you only care about conquest and weapons." Evan let out a short, humorless breath. "Some of us do, not all." Silence filled the shelter, broken only by the sound of wind outside. Lureth suddenly winced and tried to sit up. "I must go, I can't stay." "You can barely move," Evan said firmly. "You're not going anywhere." "If I stay," she insisted, "they will sense me. My body, it leaves a signal." Evan thought quickly. "I can block signals, old human trick. It's not perfect, but it might help." She stared at him, surprised. "You would hide me?" "Yes," he said, "at least until help arrives." "Why?" she asked. Evan did not answer immediately. He looked at her, alone, hunted, far from home. "Because it's the right thing to do," he finally said. Her eyes shimmered. Lureth slowly reached out and placed her hand on his arm. Her skin was warmer now, almost comforting. "My species," she said softly, "we survive cold by sharing warmth. Alone we die. Together we live." Evan understood then what she had meant earlier. "You don't have to do anything," he said quickly. "Just rest." She nodded, embarrassed but relieved. "Thank you, Evan." Hours passed. The storm continued outside, but inside the shelter something had changed. Evan remained awake, watching the sensors, listening for danger. Lureth slept, curled beneath the blanket, her breathing calm. At one point the sensor flickered again. Evan stiffened. This time the signal was stronger, and it was not alone. Ships were entering orbit. Evan looked at Lureth, sleeping peacefully for the first time since he had found her. He did not know who she really was or what she carried with her, but he knew one thing for certain. Helping her had already changed everything. The sensor light stayed dim, but the warning tone echoed in Evan's mind long after it stopped sounding. He did not wake Lureth. She slept curled on her side, her breathing slow and even, her strange silver-blue skin glowing faintly in the warm air of the shelter. Evan moved quietly to the control panel. The scanner showed several objects in high orbit, not human. The shapes were sharp and unfamiliar, drifting in slow patterns like predators waiting for the right moment. "They found her," Evan whispered to himself. He shut down all unnecessary systems, lowered the shelter's energy output, and activated an old signal-dampening field. It was meant to hide equipment, not living beings, but it was the only option he had. When he turned back, Lureth's eyes were open. "You see them," she said softly. "Yes," Evan replied, "ships, not friendly-looking." She sat up slowly, holding the blanket around her shoulders. Fear crossed her face, but she did not panic. Instead, she looked tired, deeply tired, like someone who had been running for too long. "They won't leave," she said. "They are patient." Who are they? Evan asked again. Lureth hesitated, then nodded as if making a difficult choice. The Varking Authority, she said. They rule many systems, they claim order, but they fear truth. Evan leaned against the wall, arms crossed. And you? I was one of them, she admitted. An engineer. I designed thermal network cores, systems that let ships survive extreme cold. Evan raised an eyebrow. So why hunt you? Because I discovered what they were truly used for, she said. Her voice shook. Not survival, eradication. She told him how her people's technology had been turned into weapons, how entire colonies were frozen, not destroyed by explosions, but slowly silenced as life stopped moving. It was efficient, clean, easy to deny. I recorded everything, Lureth said. Data cores, proof. When I tried to report it, they named me a traitor. Evan listened in silence. He had seen war. He knew governments lied, but the calm way she spoke about it made his chest feel tight. You ran, he said. I fled, she corrected. Because if I stayed, the truth would die with me. A loud crack echoed through the shelter as something heavy struck the outer wall. The structure shook and snow fell from the ceiling. Evan grabbed his rifle. They're scanning the surface. They will sense my heat pattern, Lureth said. My body reacts to cold differently. It is noticeable. Evan thought fast. Then we change your pattern. He moved to the storage locker and pulled out a damaged thermal suit. It was old, cracked in places, but still functional. This will mask your signature, he said. Not perfect, but better than nothing. She accepted it gratefully. As she slipped into the suit, her movements were slow but steadier than before. The warmth had helped her recover at least a little. They will search nearby shelters, Evan said. If they find us, they will not negotiate, Lureth finished. They never do. The shelter lights flickered, power levels dropped. Evan swore under his breath. They're draining energy from orbit, trying to force us out. Why stay? Lureth asked suddenly. You could signal them, tell them I forced you. They might let you live. Evan looked at her sharply. Is that what you think I should do? She lowered her gaze. It is logical. Evan shook his head. Logic isn't everything. He sat across from her, his rifle resting against his knee. You came here to survive. I won't hand you over just because it's safer for me. Lureth stared at him, her eyes shining. On my world, she said quietly, no one would say that. Outside, the storm weakened, but the silence that followed felt worse. The ships above waited. Hours passed. Evan rationed power, turning off heat in unused sections. The cold crept back in slowly. Lureth noticed him shivering. You are losing warmth, she said. I'm fine, Evan replied, though his teeth clenched slightly. She hesitated, then moved closer. My species, our bodies generate thermal energy when close to others. It is instinct. He remembered her words from before. Together we live. It's okay, he said carefully. I don't want you to feel pressured. She smiled faintly. I am choosing, not begging. She sat beside him, resting her shoulder lightly against his arm. Warmth spread instantly, surprising him. It was not intense, just steady, like sitting near a fire. Evan relaxed without meaning to. For a hunted fugitive, he said quietly, you're very calm. I am afraid, she replied, but I am no longer alone. The shelter shook again, closer this time. They're deploying ground units, Evan said after checking the scanner. Drones. Heavily armed. Lureth closed her eyes. If they take me, destroy the data. No, Evan said firmly. We protect it. She opened her eyes, surprised. Human command will be here eventually, he continued. When they arrive, the Varking won't be able to act freely. And if they arrive too late, Evan stood. Then we buy time. He moved through the shelter, setting traps from whatever scrap he could find. Old charges, broken sensors, improvised alarms. It wasn't pretty, but it was human. Lureth watched him work. You fight like this often. More than I'd like, Evan answered. A drone appeared on the external camera, then another. Black, angular machines moving through the snow with ease. They are close, Lureth whispered. Evan handed her a small device. If things go bad, activate this. It'll broadcast your data across every open channel. That would expose everything, she said. Yes, Evan replied, including us, she nodded slowly. Then the truth would live. The drones reached the shelter. One began cutting through the outer wall with a bright beam. Evan took position near the door, rifle ready. Evan, Lureth said softly, if you fall, I won't, he interrupted. The wall burst inward in a spray of ice and metal. A drone forced its way inside. Evan fired. The first shot hit cleanly, dropping the machine in a flash of sparks. The second drone entered immediately after. Lureth screamed as a stun blast struck Evan's side, throwing him across the room. Pain exploded through his body. He struggled to stand, vision blurring. The drone turned toward Lureth. She raised the device Evan had given her but hesitated. Before she could act, the shelter shook violently again. A loud explosion echoed outside. Then another. The drones went still. Evan looked up, confused. A human voice crackled through his communicator. Unknown shelter, this is Human Patrol Delta 9. Stand down, we have visual. Relief washed over Evan like warmth after long cold. Lureth dropped the device, tears streaming down her face. They came, she whispered. Evan laughed weakly. Told you we'd buy time. Outside, human ships descended through the clouds, their lights cutting through the storm. The galaxy had come closer, and nothing would be the same again. Human Patrol Delta 9 secured the area quickly, but safety did not come easily. The frozen ground still shook as distant explosions echoed across the ice fields. The Varking ships in orbit had not retreated. They were repositioning, testing human response, waiting for a mistake. Evan lay against the shelter wall, breathing hard. The stun blast had burned through his side armor. Blood darkened his suit. A human medic knelt beside him, working fast. Stay with me, the medic said. You're not done yet. I know, Evan muttered. I've got bad timing, that's all. Lureth stood nearby, wrapped in a human thermal cloak, watching everything with wide eyes. Human soldiers moved around her, cautious but not hostile. Some stared, unsure what to think of an alien woman standing under human protection. She's the one they're after, Evan said weakly, nodding toward her. Don't let them take her. The squad leader, Captain Reyes, looked at Evan carefully. We won't, she said, but this just became bigger than a rescue. Above them, Varking ships shifted formation. A transmission request appeared on the patrol's channel. They want to talk, a technician said. Captain Reyes crossed her arms. Of course they do. The Varking envoy appeared on the main display. Tall, sharp-featured, wrapped in dark armor that reflected no light. Its voice was calm, controlled, and cold. The fugitive known as Lureth is under our jurisdiction, the envoy said. She is a criminal. Return her and we will withdraw peacefully. Captain Reyes did not look impressed. She's under human protection now. This is a mistake, the envoy replied. Humans are not part of this matter. Evan forced himself upright. You made it our matter when you sent killed drones onto a human world. The envoy's eyes shifted to Evan. Collateral consequences. Lureth stepped forward before anyone could stop her. You froze children, she said, her voice steady but full of pain. You erased entire colonies. The envoy did not deny it. Order requires sacrifice. Silence followed. Captain Reyes closed the channel. We're pulling back to defensive orbit, she ordered. Prep for escalation. Human ships formed a tight perimeter around the planet. Varking vessels responded in kind. The sky itself seemed tense, like it was holding its breath. Evan was moved onto a transport shuttle. Lureth refused to leave his side. You should be with the others, he told her. I will not, she said quietly. You stood for me, I stand for you. The shuttle lifted off, breaking through the clouds. As the planet fell away beneath them, Evan felt the weight of what he had done. He had not just saved one life. He had pulled humanity into a dangerous confrontation. On the human command carrier, medical teams rushed Evan into surgery. The wound was serious but survivable. As he drifted in and out of consciousness, he heard voices arguing nearby. "She's carrying data," one said. "Enough to start a war," another replied. "Or end one," a third voice said calmly. When Evan woke, hours had passed. The sterile white ceiling of the med bay came into focus. Lureth sat beside him, holding a cup of heated nutrient solution. "You are awake," she said, relief clear in her eyes. "Guess I'm stubborn," Evan replied. "What's happening?" "They are debating," she said. "Your leaders." Evan sighed. "Figures," Lureth hesitated. "They asked if I would give them the data, and I said yes," she answered, "but only if you were allowed to hear." Evan frowned. "Why me?" "Because you believed me before proof," she said simply. Later that day, Evan was wheeled into a secure briefing chamber. High-ranking human officers filled the room. Lureth stood at the center, calm but alert. She activated her data core. Images flooded the room. Frozen cities. Silent ships drifting through space. Records of commands, orders, signatures. Names of officials from multiple species, not just Varkin, who had approved or ignored the atrocities. The room grew very quiet. "This would destabilize the sector," one admiral said. "It already is destabilized," Lureth replied. "You have simply been allowed to look away." Evan watched the officers closely. Some looked angry, some looked afraid, a few looked ashamed. "What do you want?" the admiral asked. "Asylum," Lureth said. "Protection, and for the truth to be released carefully but fully." The officers exchanged glances. "You're asking humanity to challenge the balance of power," one said. Evan spoke before he could stop himself. "We've done that before." The admiral studied him. "And what did it cost?" "Everything," Evan answered. "But we're still here." The decision took hours. Outside, the Varkin fleet tightened its blockade. Tension spread across human space as allied systems watched closely. Finally, the order was given. Humanity would grant asylum. The announcement was broadcast across open channels. Carefully edited proof was released, enough to confirm the crimes without revealing sensitive human systems. The reaction was immediate. Several neutral systems withdrew support from the Varkin Authority. Protests erupted across alien worlds. The Varkin envoy demanded Lureth's surrender again. This time the human response was simple. No. The standoff escalated. A Varkin strike group attempted to push through the human line. A brief but violent clash followed. Human ships, though fewer, fought with unexpected coordination and resilience. Evan watched the battle from the recovery ward, his arm in a brace. "They underestimate you," Lureth said quietly. "Everyone does," Evan replied. The battle ended without full war. The Varkin withdrew, unwilling to risk total exposure. But the threat did not vanish. Instead, it changed. Days later, an assassination attempt targeted Lureth inside the carrier. A disguised operative breached security. Evan reacted on instinct. Still weak, he threw himself between Lureth and the attacker. The shot grazed him, but security neutralized the threat. As medics rushed in again, Lureth knelt beside him, shaking. "You should not have done that," she said. Evan smiled faintly. "Guess I didn't learn the first time." Her hands glowed faintly as she pressed them against his chest, instinctively sharing warmth. "You are foolish," she whispered, "and brave." "Human specialty," Evan replied. After the incident, security tightened. Lureth was moved to a protected research sector. There, she began working with human scientists, adapting her technology for peaceful use, rescue systems, thermal shelters, medical support for extreme environments. She was no longer just a fugitive. She was becoming an ally. One evening, Evan found her standing near a viewport watching distant stars. "You could have disappeared," he said, "taken asylum quietly, lived a safe life." She nodded. "Yes." "So why stay involved?" She looked at him. "Because you showed me something. That standing alone is not strength. Standing together is." Outside the window, the galaxy looked vast and uncertain. But for the first time, it also looked possible. Far away, forces moved. Enemies adapted. The truth had been released, but not all of it. The conflict was far from over, and both Evan and Lureth knew the hardest part was still coming. The human carrier drifted in orbit around the frozen planet, its engines humming steadily. Inside, the tension was thick enough to feel. Every officer, every soldier, every technician knew the Varking Authority would not forget Lureth. They would not forgive her. They would not leave humanity alone. Evan walked beside the observation deck, looking out at the vast black of space. Stars glittered coldly, distant and indifferent. Lureth stood next to him, her hands clasped together, eyes scanning the ships that lingered beyond the human perimeter. "They will attack," she said quietly. Evan shook his head. "They've already tested us. Any major strike now and they risk total exposure. They'll think twice." "They underestimate humans," she said, "and that is what makes you dangerous." Evan laughed softly. "Dangerous, maybe, but mostly stubborn." She turned to him, her gaze serious. "Stubborn can win wars, Evan, but it can also destroy lives." He looked away. He had already lost count of the number of lives endangered by protecting her, including his own. But even in the cold emptiness of space, he did not regret his choice. A sudden alarm sounded. The bridge erupted with activity. Sensors had detected a Varking strike group moving toward the carrier. Unlike previous probes, these ships were fully armed and coordinated. The countdown had begun. "Battle stations," the captain barked. Human soldiers scrambled into armored pods and manned weapon systems. The carrier shuddered as the main shields powered up. Evan remained on the observation deck with Lureth. She did not move. Her pale face reflected the red glow of alert lights. "You must stay here," Evan said, his voice tense. "I am staying with you," she replied simply. "No matter what happens, I cannot leave." Evan's jaw tightened. He had spent years fighting alongside humans and had learned to accept fear as part of the job. But he could not ignore the quiet, steady courage in Lureth's expression. She was not a trained soldier. She was not a weapon. Yet she faced the unknown with a bravery that would have inspired entire fleets. The Varking fleet approached. Their ships were faster, larger, and more heavily armed. Humans had the advantage of technology, but not numbers. The first exchange of fire lit the darkness with streaks of energy. Shields flared and sparks danced across the carrier's hull. Explosions shook the deck, throwing soldiers to the floor. Evan instinctively grabbed Lureth's arm, holding her steady as the ship rocked violently. "They are too many," she whispered. "No," Evan said firmly. "Not too many, not if we fight smart." Human pilots launched fighter squads. Automated turrets unleashed precise barrages. The battle was brutal, but humans adapted with creativity. A ship moved behind an asteroid and ambushed Varking fighters from a blind spot. Another deployed decoy drones, confusing targeting systems. Lureth watched closely, her mind processing the chaos. "Your species, you adapt so quickly," she murmured. Evan smiled grimly. "That's why the galaxy underestimates us. We are clever. We don't just fight with force. We fight with everything we have." Hours passed. Both sides suffered losses. The carrier was scratched and dented, but it held. The Varking, realizing that a direct attack would cost them too much, began to withdraw. Evan exhaled heavily. "They'll come back." "Yes," Lureth agreed. "But now they know you will not surrender. That will make them cautious." Human Command held a secure meeting with Lureth afterward. She revealed further data, proof of Varking war crimes across multiple systems. The information was delicate, and human leaders debated how to release it without triggering full-scale interstellar war. "You risked everything to protect her," one officer said to Evan later, away from the council chamber. "I had no choice," Evan replied. "She came to me." "I don't abandon people who ask for help." The officer shook his head. "You might have started a war." Evan shrugged. "Maybe, or maybe we prevented one. Sometimes showing you won't back down is the only way to stop the bigger fight." Meanwhile, Lureth began working closely with human engineers and scientists. Her knowledge of alien technology allowed them to repair ships, improve survival systems on frozen worlds, and design medical devices that saved countless lives. She was no longer a hunted fugitive. She had become a symbol, a bridge between species, proof that humans could be compassionate, intelligent, and brave in ways the galaxy often overlooked. One evening, Evan visited her in the secure lab. She was bent over a holographic display, adjusting parameters on a thermal network core prototype. "You've changed everything," he said quietly. She looked up and smiled faintly. "I only survived because of you." "You survived because you fought," he corrected. "I just didn't let you die first." Her eyes softened. "Your species, you are capable of so much, more than your histories admit. You inspire more than you know." He laughed softly. "I didn't know humans were inspirational." "You are when you choose to be," she said simply. "When you choose compassion over fear." They worked in silence for a while. Outside the viewport, stars stretched endlessly, indifferent and cold. But inside the lab, warmth lingered, not just from heaters or thermal suits, but from the bond they had forged in the snow and storm. Weeks passed. Varkine reconnaissance ships circled cautiously but no longer threatened immediate attack. Human patrols were reinforced across the border system. Lureth's data had been partially released, enough to expose crimes without endangering innocents. Human diplomats worked tirelessly to mediate tensions. Evan recovered fully from his injuries. Though the wound left a scar along his side, he felt stronger than ever. The experience had taught him that courage and loyalty were more valuable than rules or orders. One night he found Lureth standing alone near the observation deck. She gazed out at the distant stars, silent, thoughtful. "You could have stayed hidden," he said, approaching her. "Avoided everything." "I could have," she replied. "But then nothing would change. I wanted to make a difference." "You already have," he said. "Not just for your people, but for humanity too." She turned to him. Her eyes reflected the soft light of the stars. "I came to your world expecting nothing. I never imagined being part of something greater." "You are," Evan said, "part of something greater than any one species." They stood together quietly, side by side, watching the galaxy that had once seemed so cold and hostile. Now it felt different. It felt alive, full of possibility. "Do you ever regret it?" Lureth asked, finally breaking the silence. "Helping you?" Evan asked. She nodded. "Never," he said firmly. "I may have risked a lot, but some risks are worth taking, always." She smiled faintly. "Then you are truly human. Not because of your strength or weapons or intelligence, but because of your heart." The stars continued to shine, indifferent yet full of promise. For the first time, both knew that together, human and alien, they could face whatever came next. And somewhere deep in the galaxy, the Varkine Authority reconsidered the consequences of underestimating humans. Their reach was vast, but humanity's courage, cleverness, and unwillingness to abandon those in need proved something they had never expected. The war was not over. Threats would rise and challenges would come. But Evan and Lureth, soldier and fugitive, human and alien, had changed the rules. They had shown that one human, willing to act with compassion and bravery, could make the galaxy pause, reconsider, and perhaps hope. The frontier world below remained frozen, quiet, and waiting. But inside the human carrier, warmth thrived, not just in heaters or blankets, but in the hearts of those who dared to choose compassion over fear. And that warmth, steady, enduring, unstoppable, was only the beginning. The galaxy had shifted. Not loudly, not in explosions or war cries, but quietly, almost imperceptibly. Human command networks hummed with new respect, and alien fleets reconsidered their assumptions about the small species at the edge of known space. Humanity had survived impossible odds, protected a hunted alien, and shown the universe that courage and compassion could rival technology and firepower. Evan Hale stood on the observation deck of the carrier once more, looking at the frozen planet below. The storms had faded, leaving the ice plains quiet and white, untouched for now. He flexed his fingers, remembering the injuries he had endured to protect Lureth. Scars on his side and arm reminded him of that fight, but they did not ache. Not when he thought about what had been gained. Lureth appeared behind him, moving silently. She leaned on the railing beside him, her white hair catching the light of distant stars. Her expression was thoughtful, almost solemn, but there was warmth in her eyes. "The humans who risked their lives for me," she said softly. "I thought your kind was incapable of loyalty. I thought you would leave me to die in the storm like everyone else." Evan smiled faintly. "Most humans aren't perfect, but some of us, we know when to act." She looked at him closely. "And you acted without hesitation." "I didn't have a choice," he said. "I saw someone in need, I helped, that's all." Her gaze softened. "It is more than that. You chose to trust me and you gave me a chance to survive. That is rare." Evan shrugged. "Maybe, or maybe humans just don't like being told they cannot do something." Lureth laughed softly, a sound like wind over ice. "It was a fragile, beautiful thing. Then I am grateful, not just for survival, but for the choice you gave me." The human carrier shifted as it entered a stable orbit around a larger space station. Engineers, diplomats, and scientists moved about with a sense of purpose. Lureth was now officially under human protection, her knowledge aiding research into alien technology, survival systems, and medical applications. Her presence had sparked innovations that promised to save countless lives across multiple star systems. Evan followed her down the corridors of the carrier, watching her interact with human engineers. She spoke with confidence now, guiding the installation of thermal systems for frontier outposts. She no longer appeared fragile or scared. Her steps were steady, her voice sure. She had survived storms, battles, and fear, and now she had found a purpose beyond fleeing. They reached a secure chamber where a team of scientists worked on a prototype thermal shield. Lureth explained adjustments to an alien energy field, her fingers tracing the holographic interface with precision. Evan watched, quietly impressed. Humans could adapt and learn fast, but watching her adapt and teach them in turn was something else entirely. "You've done more than survive," he said quietly, stepping closer. "You've changed the galaxy." She paused, glancing at him. "I could not have done it without you." He smiled faintly. "We both took risks, but I like to think humans sometimes we are more than our weapons. We are more than what others believe." She nodded. "You have proven that, not just to me but to every species that doubted you." They stood together in silence. Outside the viewport, stars stretched endlessly. Ships moved in formation, human fleets reinforced, and distant alien vessels maintained a cautious distance. The galaxy was still dangerous, still unpredictable, but humanity had shown it could stand up, fight, and protect those who could not protect themselves. A sudden alarm sounded, breaking the quiet. It was a routine alert. A patrol ship reported an anomaly near a remote system. Lureth glanced at the readout and nodded thoughtfully. "Another problem?" Evan asked. "Possibly," she said, "but this time we are ready." Weeks passed and Lureth continued to assist human engineers. She taught them new techniques, adapted technology for safer exploration, and shared her knowledge freely. Her bond with Evan grew as well, not just trust but understanding. They did not need to speak constantly. They understood each other through glances, shared purpose, and quiet moments of mutual respect. One evening, Evan found her alone near the observation deck again. The stars reflected in her pale eyes, and she seemed more serene than he had ever seen. "You were right," she said. "Standing together is stronger than standing alone." "I'm glad you think so," Evan replied. "It's easy to forget when the galaxy is trying to kill you." She smiled faintly. "But you reminded me. You reminded me that even the smallest species can make a difference. Even a single human can choose to stand for what is right." Evan looked at her, his heart steady. and you reminded me that courage isn't about strength alone. Sometimes it's about trust and protecting those who cannot protect themselves. She moved closer, her hand brushing against his arm. Warmth spread instantly, familiar and comforting. "We are different," she said softly, "but together we can endure anything." He nodded. "And we will. Whatever comes next, we will face it." For the first time, the frontier did not seem as hostile. The galaxy, though still vast and uncertain, seemed to hold possibilities. Humanity had proven it could rise to challenges that others dismissed them for. And Lureth had proven that even the hunted, the fugitive, could find strength, purpose, and hope in unexpected allies. A message arrived on the carrier's long-range channel. It was from neutral worlds observing the events of the Varkine confrontation. They requested dialogue, technology exchange, and cooperation. Slowly, the balance of power was shifting. What had begun as a fight to survive a storm on a frozen planet had rippled outward, changing perception, alliances, and the understanding of what humans could accomplish. Evan and Lureth stood side by side, watching the messages come in. She glanced at him. "You changed my life," she said simply. "You changed mine too," he replied. Outside the viewport, a small fleet of human patrols moved in formation, escorting transports to distant outposts. The galaxy was dangerous, still full of unknowns, but it had become just a little safer. And more importantly, it had become a place where humans and aliens could trust one another. Later, in the quiet of the carrier's observation deck, Lureth wrapped herself in a thermal blanket and approached Evan. "I once asked you to take me," she said softly, "to let me be your blanket." Evan smiled. "You were already helping me survive just by being here." She rested her head lightly against his shoulder, warmth flowing between them. "And now I want to stay," she whispered, "not just for warmth, but because I choose to." "And I choose you too," Evan replied. "Not because it's required, but because it matters, because you matter." The stars stretched endlessly around them. Outside, distant systems moved in quiet harmony, unaware of the small acts of courage and trust that had shifted tides and rewritten expectations. But inside the human carrier, warmth and hope existed, steady and enduring. A human soldier and a fugitive alien woman had shown that one choice, one act of courage and compassion, could change not just lives but entire worlds. They remained together side by side. The galaxy could wait. For now, survival, trust, and quiet victories mattered more. The frontier had been harsh, but humanity's heart had proven stronger than any storm. And in that strength, in that choice, in that warmth, the future of the galaxy began to feel possible. Evan closed his eyes briefly, letting the stars, distant light wash over him. Lureth remained near, steady, a living testament to courage, resilience, and trust. The galaxy would remember this story, not as a tale of conquest or power, but as proof that even in the coldest corners, humans could rise, protect, and inspire. And sometimes, the smallest acts, taking someone in, keeping them safe, standing together, could create ripples strong enough to change everything. In the quiet of the observation deck, with the cold stars shining beyond, the human soldier and the alien fugitive simply held onto each other. Not as enemies, not as strangers, but as allies. And in that simple choice, the galaxy felt just a little warmer.